the sports note for Tuesday, July 23rd. Still experimenting with this setup, and I think this is actually how it's going to kind of be going forward. So hopefully everything looks good. Hopefully everything sounds good by the time I get done editing. But we finished up the Open Championship, otherwise known as the British Open, on Sunday, very early Sunday across the pond. And for the second time this year, Xander Schauffele is a major championship winner. Now, Schauffele finished with a one-shot victory over third-round leader Billy Horschel and Justin Rose. And again, his second major this year, but also Xander Schauffele finished in the top 10 at the other two majors. He finished 8th at Augusta at the Masters, and he also finished in a tie for 7th in the U.S. Open. So he is the only major golfer that actually appeared on the first page of the leaderboard in all 4 majors this year. Now, all 4 majors were won by Americans this year, and that's the first time that that's happened in a number of years. And the fact that Schauffele has played this good really should not come as a surprise to really anybody out there. Schauffele was one of only 4 players who was on the first page of the leaderboard after all 4 rounds of the tournament. Dan Brown, Shane Lowry, and Justin Rose all finished on the first page and had the lead in the tournament at some point. Dan Brown from England had the lead after Thursday, after the first round at 6 under. He was 1 shot better than Lowry, and Rose and Schauffele were at 2 under. Now, the scoring was tight, and only 14 players broke par, and there was a great deal of wind and impending rain conditions, so scores were not going to be the greatest. Going into Friday, Shane Lowry fired a 69, and Brown shot 72, and he fell behind by 2 shots. Now, Justin Rose shot 68, and that was actually tied with a number of other golfers for the low round of the day, including Billy Horschel, and it shot him into a tie with Brown. Schauffele shot a 1 over 72, and he was 6 shots back, but again, good enough to qualify for the weekend and also putting him on the first page of the leaderboard. The weather seemed to worsen over the weekend, and the scores, there was no real middle ground. The scores were either very low or several strokes above par, and there was a lot of shifting in the leaderboard. And that's why they call Saturdays in really any championship moving day. American Sam Burns and South African Thriston Lawrence, they both shot blistering 65s, and they moved both of themselves right into contention. Scott and Russell Henley shot 66 themselves, and Schauffele shot 69, as did Horschel. The real change was Shane Lowry going from near the top of the leaderboard to shooting a 77, taking him to 1 under, 3 shots behind Horschel going into Sunday, and it also shot him right out of the final pairing. Now, even with Rose and Brown firing, the great rounds on Friday, they both shot 73 on Saturday, 2 over, but still found themselves 1 shot back. And it was good enough for Brown to be in the final pairing with Horschel. And it was also the other very cool thing and actually historic was Si-Woo Kim shooting an ace on 17, which was a par 3 238-yard hole, and it was the longest hole-in-one in British Open history, and it was also the first time a hole-in-one had ever been made at the 17th in Royal Troon in competitive play. So very, very cool. I actually got to watch that live on ESPN that morning as I was getting ready for my cousin's wedding. And then again, Schauffele goes out, plays very well, wins by 1 shot on Sunday. Coming from a few strokes back, and this actually now. Xander Schauffele playing this well across the pond in this major is not all that breaking of news here, because he's played in 8 British Opens. He's had 6 top 10 finishes, and he was the runner-up in 2018 to Francesco Molinari. Now, the the ironic thing is Molinari actually, I don't remember if it was going into the British or if it was going into the U.S. Open last month, but Molinari actually holed out on the 18th hole in a qualifier to actually allow him to play in that major championship. For Schauffele, it's his 12th professional win. It's his 9th on the PGA Tour. He's got 4 others on the European Tour. I'm not sure why that math adds up. That's what Wikipedia and ESPN is saying. But he was also the 2016-17 season PGA Rookie of the Year. And at 30 years old, he's now got 2 majors. And he's also finished very high in some of the in a lot of the others. Again, he was the runner-up a few years ago. He's also got a resume that puts him on par with a lot of other guys, just maybe 1, if not, and even 2 majors ahead of him. He won the Ryder Cup as part of Team USA in 2021. He was a member of the 2023 team that lost, but he's also been a member of the 2019 and 2022 President's Cup teams, and also right now is sitting second in the standings for the President's Cup, which will actually be held in Quebec in late September, which Jim Furyk is going to be the captain of. And he also, Xander Schauffele's got himself a very, very important July and early August, as not only does he win the British Open, but he's also a member of Team USA for the Paris Olympics that get underway this coming Friday. Now, the first round of the men's golf event will not start until August the 1st, ending on August the 4th, as the men go out and play first and then the ladies play afterwards. And Schauffele is the defending gold medalist in individual stroke play in the Olympic Games, and he's going to be looking for a repeat. Really, since golf was added, first of all, has obviously not happened before, because golf's only been a part of the Olympics again in the last few years. Or I should say in the last few Olympiads. So when you look at some of his other competitors, Justin Thomas last won a major in 2022, and he's missed the cut in 5 of his last 10 majors since winning the PGA in 2022. Jordan Spieth has 3 majors and was thought to be the next great thing, but he's come up empty since 2017, and he last finished in the top 10 at a major at the 2023 Masters, where he tied for 4th. Rory McIlroy, who a lot of people thought is now getting a career resurgence, he's got 4, but he's got no majors in the last decade, despite being the runner-up at the U.S. Open last month. And McIlroy missed the cut this weekend, but he's also on his way to Paris for the Olympics, where he performed very well back in 2020. Now, the other thing that Xander Schauffele has going for him is this also, he was 3rd in the world golf rankings behind McIlroy and naturally number 1 Scottie Scheffler, who was on the first page of the leaderboard himself before kind of faltering a little bit down the stretch. Still got himself, a very good finish, and would actually have won his 2nd major as well, and he's already got 6 wins this year on tour. But don't count Xander Schauffele out to start hunting down. He may not hunt down Xander Schauffele for Player of the Year, especially when it comes to FedEx points, but he's also 2nd in, as we mentioned, in the President's Cup rankings. But this now got him past Rory McIlroy into 2nd in the world golf rankings. McIlroy, after Sunday, has has a scoring of 9.06 in the world golf rankings. This now moves Xander Schauffele to 11.13. So they in turn flip-flop, with Scottie Scheffler playing that well. Scottie Scheffler is at 17.99. So there's very, very little chance, with only 1 major remaining, that Schauffele is going to catch Scheffler for that number 1 world golf ranking. but it also puts Xander Schauffele into very elite company, as there have only been 16 golfers that have been number two, that have spent multiple weeks at number two in the world golf ranking and not reached the top spot. Now, some of the other players that are on that list are Phil Mickelson, Mark O'Meara, Furyk, Jose Maria Olazabal, and by the time he tees off and the Paris Games conclude, regardless of whether he's on a medal podium or not, he's going to pass the late Payne Stewart, as he currently sits at 248 weeks in the top 10 over the course of his career, and Stewart is at 249. So even if Scotty goes out and wins a couple of more tournaments, let's say Scotty gets back on track and wins the final major of the year coming up next month, and regardless of what we see with the President's Cup, even though that's not it's not a standing type event for the World Golf Rankings, the FedEx Cup, anything of that nature, if Xander Schauffele goes out and finishes on the podium and Scotty Scheffler does not, and performs well in the final major next month, you'd have to think that even if Scotty goes out and wins the Player of the Year, if he wins the FedEx Cup, you're going to be very, very hard pressed to find an argument where he had a better year than Xander Schauffele. Ironically enough, Scotty has been the number one for quite some time now. He's got several majors. He goes out and he's basically now, I don't want to say he's approached Tiger level, but he's basically, every time Scotty is in a tournament, you have to think that he's one of the odds-on favorite, especially if he's on one of the first two pages of the leaderboard going into that weekend. Xander Schauffele may not have that type of closing power, but he's very, very deceptive of the way that he plays. Golf enthusiasts have been singing his praises for a number of years, and he's always been right there, and now has kind of started to break through this year and really start to eclipse what his potential could have been. Nobody was actually saying he was going to be like Jordan Spieth and come out of the gates gangbusters, or a Zach Thomas, or a Justin Thomas, or a lot of the younger guns in recent years, and even like a Bryson DeChambeau or a Brooks Koepka before they jumped over to LIV. And even those guys finding success, and John Rahm recently going over to LIV, and Rahm, continuing to progress, up the world golf rankings. And now, unfortunately, as they've left the PGA Tour, are no longer under those FedEx Cup points and are really not part of those world golf rankings, per se, because they're not playing in the same level of high-profile tournaments. They're not playing 72 holes on that sham of a tour. Let's be honest, that money, that cash grab. But it would be very interesting to see what Schauffele does from here on out the rest of this season, especially with the fact that he's going to have the biggest target on his back in Paris in a little over a week's time at this point. I want to say August 1st is a week from Thursday. So yeah, he's got basically 8 days before players start gunning for him in Paris, and then he's got another major, and then he's got the President's Cup going from there. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you actually believe is going to end up finishing with the better 2024? Is it going to be Scotty? Is it going to be Xander? Does Rory kind of right the ship, get his name tossed into the hat here? Mike and I are finally back with the Wise Guys this coming Saturday night, and I will be with you guys very, very soon. Everyone have yourself a great rest of your afternoon. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.